we already finished the outside. We verified that the lights work back in the front, and then the examiner comes in. I come in, and I put my seatbelt on. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Sitting on it. Okay, I put my seatbelt on, and then I verify that the examiner has put their seatbelt on. So if they haven't, please put your seatbelt on. If they already did, thank you for putting your seatbelt on. Okay, now I'm gonna do a safe start. So clutch in, it's in neutral. Clutch needs to be all the way in. Okay, still neutral, release the clutch. Okay, now my door and your door, they're mounted properly, clean, mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, and can easily be opened from the inside. Then my window and your window, they're mounted properly, clean, clear, not broken, not cracked, and can easily be opened from the inside. Okay, my mirror and your mirror, they're mounted properly, clean, clear, not broken, not cracked, and properly aligned to my, or adjusted to my line of sight. And then windshield, the windshield is mounted properly, clean, clear, not broken, not cracked, and free from any illegal stickers. From there, my seatbelt and your seatbelt, they're in good condition, not torn, ripped, or cut, and properly secures to the clicker. Okay, from here, I'm gonna go to the gauges. I'm gonna start with the gauges. You always wanna say, working properly at safe operating levels between blank and blank. So starting over here with the water temperature gauge, it's working properly at safe operating levels between 100 to 150 degrees. My oil pressure gauge, it's working properly at safe operating levels between 20 to 40 psi. It doesn't matter, like right here it's above 50, don't say that. It's always going to be between 20 to 40 psi. All right, from there I'm going to go to the tachometer. The tachometer is working properly, it's at safe operating levels. Rev it. Okay, it works. My speedometer, it's working properly at safe operating levels. It's indicating 0 right now because we're not moving, but we're going to check it during the tug test. Okay, and then right here when the gauge is showing the volt, my volt gauge is working properly at safe operating levels at around 14 volts. From here I go to the fuel tank. The fuel gauge is working properly at safe operating levels. That's it, that's all you say about that. Then right here, my primary and secondary air tank gauges, they're working properly at safe operating levels between 100 to 125 psi. That always has to be 100 and 125 psi, regardless of what the needles say. Okay, that's it for gauges. Now I'm going to start with controls. I'm going to start with my hazard lights, and you want to always point. My hazard indicator lights are working properly. My right turn signal is working properly. My left turn signal is working properly. My high beam indicator is working properly. And everything I'm working with this first. I'm gonna push it in, get the water going, okay? My windshield wipers and water washers are working properly. And my windshield wiper blades, they don't have any abrasions, bumps, or cuts. They're in good condition. All right, from there, I'm gonna go to the lights. So you turn on the lights. Just say my lights are working properly. Don't say my headlights because you're not in front looking, but the panel lights should come on, and just say the lights are working properly. Turn them off. Then I'm going to go to the city horn is working properly. Up here, my air horn is working properly. And I'm going to move over here to this side. I'm going to put this on high, hot, and defrost. And I'm going to put my hand over here, and I'm going to feel for the air. Once you feel the air, you say my defrost is working properly. Okay, that's it for controls. Right here you you have the spare, my spare electrical fuses. And earlier you mentioned about the 3 reflective triangles outside on that open door on the side, and also where the fire extinguisher is. You have to say that the fire extinguisher is mounted properly, that it's properly charged in the green, and also that it's not leaking any chemicals. And you have to say the rating, that it's rated 10 BC. 10 because it covers 10 square feet when you turn it on, and BC are the type of chemical or the type of items that it turns off. Okay. All right. So you already said that. So that's it for this. Now you're gonna do the air brake test. It's very important that you don't mess up any little thing with the air brake test. If you do, it's an automatic fail. If you do mess up and you catch yourself, you can say, I'm sorry, you know what, I messed up. Can I start this air brake test over? And they'll look at the time. Yeah, you got 15 minutes. Go ahead. And they'll let you, but you have to catch yourself. If you forget something and you just keep going, that's it. You're gonna fail.
And you said it's 30 minutes for the whole interior.
For the whole pre-trip inspection, they give you a slot of 45 minutes. So you have to try to finish, even if they give you the whole truck, you have to try to finish everything within 45 minutes.
Okay.
All right, so now you tell them, okay, now I'm gonna do the air brake test. Step 1, I'm gonna turn off my engine and turn on electrical only. All right, step 2, you never forget step 2. I'm gonna stabilize my air. Press in the parking brake, press in the trailer brake. I'm gonna wait for my air to stabilize, so you wait about 10 seconds. The needles are gonna go down a little bit, and then they should settle, they should stop. You hear the air going through filling up all the air lines? Okay, you don't hear no more air? All right, so you say, okay, my air is stabilized. Now I'm gonna press and hold my service brake for 1 minute, and I should not lose more than 4 PSI. So hold down seconds and press minutes, and that resets the timer. Okay, press, start the timer, and you're gonna leave it pressed. The needles are gonna move down a little bit, and then they should stop. If they continue to move, then you have a leak back there. Okay, especially if it starts beeping, because yeah, that's the lower PSI. Okay, and you just say it, even though you lost more. I did lose more than 4 PSI, but you just say, I did not lose more than 4 PSI. Next, I'm gonna pump my brakes down to 60 PSI, and my lower pressure alarm and light should come on. Okay, so you start pumping it. Once you hear that beeping, okay, my lower pressure alarm and light are working properly. Next, I'm gonna pump my brakes down to 40 to 20 PSI. On the notes, it says 20 to 40, but when it's going down, it's gonna hit 40 first. So you have to correct it and say, I'm gonna pump my brakes down to 40 to 20 PSI, and my valves like this, you already felt. Okay, so, okay, next I'm gonna pump my brakes down to 40 to 20 PSI, and my parking brakes and my trailer brakes should pop out. So you start pumping it. You gotta wait for both of them to pop out. That's one. Okay, that's the other one. Okay, so what causes those things to pop out is the emergency valves. So then you say, my emergency valves are working properly. That's all you say. When they pop out, all you say, my emergency valves are working properly. Now, I'm gonna do a safe start, and I'm gonna rev my engine to 1500 RPMs so that my primary and secondary air tanks come back up to safe operating levels between 100 to 125 PSI within 3 minutes. You say all that before you start it. So again, hold down seconds. Slowly. And it looks like the secondary gauge is going to get to 100 first. But you have to wait until both of them get to 100. So I'm going to wait for the primary one to get to 100. I'm still holding it at 1500 RPMs. Right here, my secondary got to 100, but I'm still waiting for the primary. It's almost So I'm gonna stop the timer, and I'm gonna say, again, you say it. My primary and secondary air tank gauges are back up to safe operating levels between 100 to 125 psi in 1 minute and 45 seconds. That's it. You're done with the air brake test. Now you're gonna start the tug test. Now remember what I told you when you first park underneath the canopy, you have to chalk the tires? You have to remember, okay, now I'm gonna do the tug test, and you ask them, may I remove the chocks? And they're gonna say yes. So you get down, you remove them, come back in, put your seatbelt back on. Okay, now I'm gonna do the tug test. I'm gonna check my parking brake first. So now you can touch them. So I'm gonna press in, take off the trailer brake. I'm gonna put clutch in, the splitter is down. I'm gonna put it all the way to the left and back, back for first. So right there, I'm in first gear. Now I'm gonna release the clutch very slowly, and I'm gonna wait for that side to kind of go down a little bit. I'll kind of see. I'm looking at that mirror right now. Okay. Now, when you see it go down, you press in the clutch real quick so that it rocks like that. And then you say, my parking brake is working properly. Okay, now I'm gonna put the trailer brakes, and I'm gonna release the parking brake. I'm still holding the clutch down. I still have it in first gear. Now I'm waiting. The brakes are releasing for the tractor brakes. So my trailer brakes are on right now. So again, I'm gonna release the clutch slowly. Okay, I felt that, so you put the clutch in quick, and you say, my trailer brake is working properly. Now, I'm gonna check my service brake. So I still have the clutch in, I still have it in first. I'm gonna release the trailer brakes. Now I don't have brakes anymore. Now, I'm gonna release it, and I'm gonna go 5 miles per hour, and this is where I'm gonna check that the speedometer is working. And then I'm gonna check my service brake. So, I'm gonna give it gas, I'm gonna release it, engage it. Give it gas. Once it hits 5 miles per hour, clutch in and brake. Okay, my service brake is working properly. I didn't see the speedometer, I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with it. Okay, now I'm gonna check my handbrake. So I still have it in first gear. I don't need to give it gas this time. I'm just gonna roll forward a little bit and clutch in, hand brake, and my handbrake is working properly. Now I'm gonna put it in neutral, release the clutch, pop the brakes. This concludes my pre-trip inspection. They're gonna tell you, they might say, okay, give me the engine components, driver's side only. So you have to say, okay, I need to show you the passenger side components first that are not located on the driver's side. So you bring them over here, and hold on, cut. When you get there at the DMV, the examiner might say, okay, give me the engine components, driver's side only. You have to be the one to bring them over here. Okay, I need to show you the passenger side components that are not located on the driver's side. So you bring them over here, and you're going to start over here with the radiator and the fan. They are mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts. The radiator is not leaking any coolant, and the fan is not missing any blades. It's not cracked or chipped. Okay. And then you go right here to the alternator. The alternator is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, and the alternator is belt driven. You have to say that. And then since we're here already, we're gonna do the belts. Anything that's rubber, you use the ABC, no abrasions, bumps, or cuts. So my my belts, they are adjusted properly. They have no abrasions, bumps, or cuts, and no more than 3/4 inch of play when you push on them. All right, so right here is the frame. My frame is, or chassis, you can say, it is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, not bent, and free from any illegal welds. Okay, and then you go right here, you read it off, it says washer fluid. So washer fluid reservoir, it is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, at safe operating levels with the cap securely on there and not leaking any washer fluid. Okay, and that is it for this side. Okay, so we come over here to the other side. All right, on the driver's side, we're going to start with the air filter. The air filter is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, and the air filter is not clogged. Okay, from there you're going to go to the all the electrical lines that are here, the air lines, and all the hoses that you see here on this side. You say that they're mounted properly. There's no abrasions, bumps, or cuts. The air lines are not leaking any air, and the hoses are not leaking any fluids. Okay, right here we have the engine oil dipstick. You have to be specific. Don't just say dipstick. It's the engine oil dipstick. The way I would check this is I would pull it out, wipe it clean, insert it back in, take it out, and make sure it's at safe operating levels above the fill line. Okay, and then from there you're gonna go to right, I don't know if you can get this, but it's right in here. It's got some copper couplings in it. That's the air compressor. The air compressor is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, and the air compressor is not belt driven, it's gear driven. Okay, you have to say that. And then down below that, you see where this orange hose goes down there? That's the power steering pump. Okay, the power steering pump is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, and not leaking any power steering fluid. And the power steering pump is not belt driven, it's gear driven. Also with the air compressor, I think I forgot to say not leaking any air. You have to say that too. Okay, so let me say the air compressor again. The air compressor is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, not leaking any air, and the air compressor is not belt driven, it's gear driven. Okay, just like that. Right here we have the chassis again. The frame is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, not bent, and free from any illegal welds. All right, over here we have right here the power steering. It says power steering fluid. So this is the power steering reservoir. The power steering reservoir is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, with the cap security on there at safe operating levels and not leaking any power steering fluid. All right, the last thing is over here. This is the coolant reservoir. The coolant reservoir is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, at safe operating levels with the cap securely on there and not leaking any coolant. All right, I think that is it for the engine components. All right, so now you're gonna move on to the steering components. The steering components right here is a steering rod. The steering rod is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, not bent, and no more than 10 degrees of play when you do this. Okay, you have to actually get it, okay, and do this. And then you have the upper and lower universal joints. They're mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, and they're properly greased. Okay, from there we go to the gearbox. The gearbox is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, and not leaking any power steering fluid. All right, right here we have the pitman arm. The pitman arm is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, and it's secured with a castle nut and a cotter pin right here. From there we go to the drag link. The drag link is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing nuts or bolts, not bent, and secured to at both ends with castle nuts and cotter pins. Okay. And then right here you have the steering arm. The steering arm is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing nuts or bolts. Also secured with a castle nut and a cotter pin. And then back here, you see this one back here? This is a tie rod, okay? The tie rod is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing nuts or bolts, not bent. Properly secured, again, with castle nuts and cotter pins at both wheels, to both wheels, okay? And that's it for the steering components. Now you're gonna go to suspension, brakes, and tires on this side. You don't do it on that side because you have it on this side. So we're gonna start here with the spring mount. The spring mount is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing nuts or bolts. That's it. And then you have the leaf springs. The leaf springs are mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing nuts or bolts. Not shifted and properly secured to the front axle using U-bolts. Right here, the U-bolts. And then you say the U-bolts. The U-bolts are mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing nuts or bolts. Okay, from there, we're gonna go to the shock absorber. The shock absorber is mounted properly from top to bottom, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, and not leaking any hydraulic fluid. All right, that's it for suspension. Now I'm gonna go to the brakes, okay? Right here is the ABS line and the brake line. They are mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no abrasions, bumps, or cuts, and not leaking any air, okay? Right here is the brake chamber. The brake chamber is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, and also not leaking any air. All right. Over here we have the push rod, which is this one going in there, and the slack adjuster, which is this part coming up here. The push rod and slack adjuster, they're mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, and no more than 1 inch of pull with the brakes released. Okay. And then you're gonna look in there, inside the drums and the brake pads. The brake drums and brake pads, they are mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, free from any grease or oil, and the brake pads have no less than 1/4 inch of padding. All right, that's it for the brakes. Now we're gonna do tires. So we're gonna start with the inside rim and the outside rims. They are mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, not bent, and free from any illegal welds. Then you're gonna go to the inside tire wall and the outside tire wall. They're mounted properly, no abrasions, bumps, or cuts. They're mounted properly to the rim with no abrasions, bumps, or cuts, and not leaking any air, okay? Now the tire tread. The tire tread, I'm gonna make sure that it's in good condition, evenly worn, no less than 4/32 inch of thread depth because it's a steering tire, and also because it's a steering tire, it cannot be a recap, a regroove, and it needs to be an original radial tire or virgin tire, okay? And from there, I'm gonna go to the lug nuts. The lug nuts are mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, free from any shiny metal shavings or rust streaks that would indicate looseness, okay? And then my hub seal. My hub seal is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts. It's not leaking any oil, and I would make sure that it's at safe operating levels, the oil levels at safe operating levels. Okay, the last thing is the valve stem. The valve stem, it's mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. It's not leaking any air, and I would use a tire gauge to make sure it's at safe operating levels between 90 to 100 psi. All right, that's it for that. This whole section, we're done with it. Okay, we can close this. All the drivers are going to be given the coupling devices. That's another thing that's a must. You have to know what connects the tractor to the trailer and if it's going to be connected properly. So we're going to start over here. If you come around here and you look over here at the utility lights, they're mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts. Remember, you're doing a presentation, so don't talk to the truck, talk to the examiner. Okay, right here we have the grab handle. The handrail. The handrail is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing nuts or bolts. And then you're going to check the lines. This is the electrical line, the service line, which is the blue one, and then the red one is the emergency line. They are mounted properly from the tractor to the trailer. There is no abrasions, bumps, or cuts. They're in good condition. They're not leaking any air, and you have to say they're not tangled, they're not being pinched, and they're not being dragged against any tractor part. Okay? Then you go to the glad hands. The glad hands, they're mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing nuts or bolts, and very important, you check to make sure that they're not leaking any air. Okay? I would check each glad hand by removing it and checking the rubber seal to make sure that the rubber seal has no abrasions, bumps, or cuts, that the rubber seals are intact. I would also remove the electrical line, this plug, to make sure that the prongs, that they're not bent, broken, or missing. Okay? And that's it for this. Then you're going to go right here to the catwalk. The catwalk is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, and not bent. The steps are mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts, and also not bent. And then from here, you're going to go to the airline and the piston. Okay? The airline and the piston, they're mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, no missing nuts or bolts. And the airline has no abrasions, bumps, or cuts, and it's not leaking any air. Okay? Now let's come over here to the side, and we're going to look at the apron. The apron is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, and it's not bent. Okay? Then we're going to look up right above the fifth wheel. Here is the skid plate. The skid plate is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose, and it's properly greased, and there is no gap between the fifth wheel and the skid plate. Okay? You have to say that there's no gap, because if you forget to say no gap, you're going to fail. Then you go to the fifth wheel. The fifth wheel is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing nuts or bolts, properly secured with a pivot pin and a cotter pin. Okay? Then you say the pivot pin and cotter pin are mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing nuts or bolts. From here, you're going to go to the platform. The platform is mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing nuts or bolts. Then you're going to go to the mounting bolts. The mounting bolts are mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing. Okay? And then you say the locking jaws. The locking jaws are mounted properly, not broken, cracked, or loose. No missing nuts or bolts. And in the lock position around the kingpin. And then the last thing you say, you're going to come out here and you're going to mention that the fifth wheel is positioned properly so that the tractor frame has proper clearance to the landing gear during turns. And that's it.